Let's show them what we can do.
We may never see a team like the 2018 Shanghai Dragons again. 40 games, 40 losses, and what should be a permanent spot on the record list. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details and all the reasons why the Dragons were so bad. I'm just here to talk numbers. And the numbers say the Dragons should have won some games, or at least one. I mean, they lost 4 of their matches 3-2, so with just a little luck or with just one mistake by their opponents, they might have come out on top. So what would be the odds of that happening? Today, I'm going to try and figure that out. Alright, before I get started, let me take a brief moment here to explain my methodology. I've got a longer description of how all this works on my site. I've got a link in the description below. But it's basically like this. Imagine you and your friend each have a coin. You both flip, and if one person comes up heads and the other tails, that person wins. If you both come up the same, you reflip until one of you wins. Now imagine that the coins are weighted. Maybe my coin comes up heads 65% of the time, and your coin comes up heads 40% of the time. Obviously that's advantage me, but you could still win. And with a little luck, you might even win, say, 3 out of 5 times. That is basically the essence of the system I use to predict who would win if 2 owl teams faced off against each other. I take their map winning percentage and apply a modifier to account for strength of schedule. I call that number a team's SAMP, or strength adjusted map percentage. You can think of it as the odds that a team's coin would come up heads. So once I have the SAMPs of 2 teams, I do some math stuff to figure out the chances of each team winning a map, and run those numbers over a series of maps until someone wins the match. I can do that for individual games, series of games, or as I'm going to do here, an entire season. Like I said, you can read the full description of how all that works on my site. So, the 2018 Dragons won 21 maps, lost 141, drew 2, and had a SAMP of 0.154. That's really, really bad. It means their coin came up heads about 15% of the time. In case you're wondering, the 2020 Boston Uprising were actually worse with a 132 SAMP, but there are some issues with the 2020 stats because of how the schedule was split up, so those numbers are a little weird. So I took Shanghai's schedule for 2018 and found their chances of winning each game. These range from 18.4% when they took on the second worst Florida Mayhem, and just 0.4% or 1 in 265 against the New York Excelsior. That means that the Dragons would have needed to play the equivalent of about 6.5 seasons worth of games just to get 1 win over the NYXL. Forget 6.5 though. I simulated Shanghai's season 100 times. That gave them 400 chances to beat New York. Did they pull it off? We'll get to that in a moment, but first, let's look at how the 100 seasons went as a whole. If I just play the percentages and do the math, Shanghai comes up with a 20.5% chance of going 0-40. In my simulation, they were right on that, going winless 20 times out of 100. 31 times they had 1 win, meaning they won 0-1 about half the time. They managed 2 wins 25 times, 3 wins 18 times, and tasted a lofty 4 victories 6 times. On average, the Dragons managed 1.59 wins per season, winning just about 4% of their games. Of course, they did their best against the Mayhem, winning about 20% of their matches. They also won nearly 9% of the time against the Fuel, but didn't manage better than 4% against any other team. And yes, in 400 matches against New York, Shanghai somehow came out on top twice. Miracles do happen, at least on a spreadsheet. Okay, how about some specific accomplishments? Do you remember how the season wore on for the Dragons? How they went 0-30, 0-31, 0-32, and people were just waiting for them to win, waiting for them to finally pull through with a victory. Well, in the 80 seasons where they actually won some games, their latest first win came in their 39th game when the 0-38 Dragons finally broke through against the Los Angeles Gladiators. Interestingly enough, despite beating the Shock 13 times overall, none of those wins came in Shanghai's 40th and final match of the season, regardless of how many wins they had overall. On the flip side, there were 3 cases out of 100 where the Dragons won their very first match, which was also against the Gladiators. In fact, in one of those sims, they started a respectable 4-8 before dropping their final 28 contests. How about back-to-back wins? Only one simulation saw the Dragons win any consecutive games, and it was actually a 3-game winning streak. And that came early in Stage 2 against the Fuel, Valiant, and the Gladiators. Seriously, they only beat the Gladiators like 9 times out of 400 across all my sims, but they just keep coming up in these. In the real 2018, the Dragons didn't even take a map against the Gladiators in 16 tries. Here's one last observation. Naturally, the Dragons have the longest losing streak in Owl history. Number 2 on that list is a tie between the Mayhem and Fuel, who've each lost 15 in a row. So my question is, in any of the 100 simulations, could Shanghai not still hold the record? Were there any times where they were lucky enough to not have a losing streak of 16 games or more? The answer is yes. There were 6 simulations where the Dragons didn't lose 16 in a row. As you might expect, those tended to come in their more successful seasons, relatively speaking. 2 of their 3-win seasons and 3 of their 4-win seasons fit the bill. In one season, though, the Dragons lost 13 to start, then they won, lost 11, won, and then lost 14 to fit that criteria while finishing 2-38. Now, the bad news is the 2019 Dragons lost their first 2 matches, so as a franchise, the Dragons still would have lost 16 in a row. Now, I didn't make this video to poke fun at the Dragons. Nobody likes to lose, and professional athletes probably like it even less than you or me. Really, I just wanted to show the possibilities of how it could have gone if things had broken just a little bit better for the team. If their fans or even any of their players are watching this, know that it wasn't hopeless. Yeah, you went out there 40 times and lost 40 times, but the odds were actually in your favor that you'd win at least once. Maybe you just needed a better coin. If you enjoy stats like this and want to see more, check out my website owlstats.net and follow me on Twitter at owlstatsnet. Like and subscribe and let me know in the comments what you thought of this video and if you'd like to see more like it in the future. Thank you so much for watching.